Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jeremy Leffler, and I work in the policy office at the National Science Foundation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our final day of the Fall 2023 NSF Virtual Grants Conference. And I'm now pleased to present this session, which is an update from the NSF Division of Financial Management.
Good morning and welcome to our morning session where we will be discussing important information concerning NSF's post-award financial processes. I would like to first introduce the speakers for today's session. I am Justin Pohl and I am the section chief of our Payments and Outreach section. I'm here today with Tia Davidson, Suresh Shah, and Lorraine Parker, who are a few of our financial management specialists in the section. We have a diverse agenda today that hopefully will be engaging to both new and veteran NSF grantees. Today, we will highlight some key areas across both the operations and monitoring sections of our team, update the community on some monitoring and reporting activities, and finally spotlight our newest award monitoring courtesy notification. To start, I'd like to share a bit about our organization and mission. Some of our longer standing grant recipients may have known us previously as the Cash Management Branch. Our branch is under the Division of Financial Management, which sits under the Office of Budget, Finance, and Award Management, led by NSF's Chief Financial Officer. Our organization is responsible for overseeing NSF's payment operations, which includes not only grants, but contracts, travel, and other administrative payments across NSF. We are also responsible for financial outreach and engagement with our grantee community, as well as post-award financial monitoring activities for which we work closely with our other divisions under the BFA organization. The Awardee Cash Management Service is our in-house grants payment system. Some of you may use ACMS in addition to other government-wide grant payment systems, such as HHS's Payment Management System, or PMS, or Treasury's ASAP. ACMS is a custom system and has been in operation for 10 years now. One of the advantages of ACMS that our grantees hopefully enjoy is that it requires disbursement requests at the individual award level, rather than drawing down a summary advance payment and reporting award level expenditures at a later date, which is how our previous process had worked. As a result, we eliminated the collection of the SF 425 Federal Financial Report, but there are a few annual reporting initiatives that we require from our community to supplement some of the missing pieces, specifically our annual grant accrual validation, which typically kicks off in Q1 currently, and our program income reporting, which had just ended in November. For a comprehensive overview of key topics related to grant payment operations and monitoring, I would encourage you to please check out our Payments and Analytics branch website for our frequently asked questions document. Our team puts a lot of work into grooming this FAQ annually as our business evolves, and we even use it internally as a one-stop shop reference for common inquiries that we receive from our financial research community. We anticipate releasing our FY 2024 version next quarter, but our FY 23 version of the FAQ is available on our website now. So I would encourage you all to download it, print it out, or bookmark the link, which doesn't change with the annual updates. And to kick us off with our general information, I'm now going to turn it over to Suresh.
Thank you, Justin. Next, I am going to take a deeper dive into the payment operations side of our portfolio. We have a team of 5 specialists dedicated to business support and payment processing, who are assigned NSF grantees based on a portfolio of states. Your dedicated point of contact can be found on our external NSF PAB website linked on the previous slide in the handout. I encourage you to reach out to them for any questions you might have about payments, refunds, or other post-award financial processes. This process flow shows our grant payment process at a high level and how your ACMS drawdowns are processed daily. The cutoff for our daily payment schedule is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so please be mindful of this cutoff when preparing your request. The request must be certified to be scheduled for next day processing. The following business day, our payment specialist reviews the ACMS drawdowns from the previous night's batch process and prepares a payment schedule to transmit to the Department of Treasury. Disbursements are typically scheduled the next business day, at which time Treasury will process the requested disbursements to our grantees. One exception to this 2 business day end-to-end cycle is when we have large dollar payment schedules, that is, exceeding $50 million in payments for a given day. To meet Treasury cash forecasting requirements, the payments for large dollar schedules are dispersed 2 business days after transmission, rather than 1. This scenario is fairly infrequent throughout the fiscal year, but more common in peak periods such as our fourth quarter and year-end close payment rush, August and September, and in June, which is many of our grantees' fiscal year's end. When requesting cash during these times, please account for this extra business day of processing in your expectations. On the next slide, I will talk about some other best practices to minimize delays in receiving funds. There are a few common reasons that could either cause delays in receiving payment or receiving less funds than expected. They are summarized here, and I will talk about them more on the subsequent slides. First, in terms of delays to receiving payments, if the end-to-end process is 2 business days, why is it taking 3+ days to receive funds from my payment request? Some transactions require review and approval by a PAB payment specialist before the transaction can be processed. This additional review layer can add time required to process your request and may delay payments. You can avoid this review by not making unnecessary entries in the remarks field of your transaction, which is one of the triggers for NSF review. The remarks field should only be used for communicating items directly to NSF staff. If you wish to leave notes to help your organization identify the purpose of the transaction, please utilize the internal comments field instead. The use of the internal comments field will not cause any delays in processing. In some instances, your payment request may be delayed due to an expired inactive SAM registration. Please be sure to maintain an active and up-to-date SAM registration to avoid any delays of this sort. NSF disperses funds to your organization's bank's account based on the banking information submitted to the System for Award Management, SAM. Before requesting a payment transaction, please ensure your organization's SAM registration is active and up to date, including the banking data. NSF's new accounting system stops payment to any awardee with an expired or invalid registration. I will now turn it back over to Justin. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I am going to discuss why your payment received may have been less than what you had requested. In some instances, your payment request will only be partially accepted, which means 1 or more awards for which payment was requested against failed to post to our financial system. For example, if you requested payment against 5 awards for a total of $125,000, and one of those award payments in the amount of $5,000 had an issue during the interface with our financial system, the payment you receive would only be $120,000. When this occurs, more information can be found regarding the particular awards that had an issue in an error message contained on the transaction in ACMS, or you are welcome to contact your assigned payment specialist that is listed on our website. Once the issue is resolved, the payment can be requested again at a future date. The original transaction will not be automatically processed again. I would like to provide you with an update on how the Treasury Offset Program, known as TOPS, affects our grant-related payments. In FY 2022, NSF requested that its award payments related to financial assistance awards be exempted from TOPS offsets. NSF received approval from the Department of Treasury, and we worked to implement the exemption in August of 2022. So all future award-related payments for financial assistance awards will no longer be impacted by TOPS offsets. Next, I'm going to talk a bit about the post-award adjustment process. Here is a case study to benchmark your current knowledge of the scenario. Your organization recently received a late supplier invoice for costs incurred during the award project period. However, after logging into ACMS, you find the award has been financially closed. Which answer best applies to this scenario? A, in order to receive reimbursement for this expense, you must send a request to your Division of Grants and Agreements grant official to reopen and extend the award. Or B, in order to receive reimbursement for this expense, you must submit an adjustment via ACMS, provide a justification for the adjustment, and maintain appropriate supporting documentation in the event this expense is audited or selected for additional advanced monitoring. The answer is B. Adjustments to financially closed awards are permitted when reimbursement for expenses had incurred during the award project period. A request to reopen and extend the award is only required when new spending is required. Let me explain a little bit further. 120 days after the end of the period of performance on your award, NSF executes what's called a financial closeout process. This is automated and it deobligates the remaining funds from the award, meaning it sweeps the remaining balance and reduces the award by the amount to equal the expended amount. After this 120-day closeout, NSF grantees have an opportunity to submit an upward adjustment or an additional payment request for an additional 14 months after the financial closeout. This additional payment request is limited to the amount of remaining balance that was swept at the time of the financial closeout. There is a common misconception on whether a financially closed award needs to be reopened in order to process these additional reimbursements, or whether an adjustment request will suffice. So again, if the reimbursement request that you're requesting after financial closeout involves expenses that were incurred during the award project period, you can simply request an adjustment. If you are asking to spend new funds or incur new expenses after the original end date, that is when a reopen and an extension would be required to be requested. There are some additional limitations to consider for adjustments. Payment transaction totals submitted via ACMS must be equal to or greater than 0. This means your institution must offset any kind of return or remittance against an available award that requires payment. If such an award is not available, the funds must be returned either through pay.gov or via check. Furthermore, there are these additional restrictions enforced by the system. Adjustments against an individual closed award must currently be greater than or equal to plus or minus $1. Upward adjustments, also known as additional payments, are available for 14 months after the award is financially closed, or in some cases a shorter period if the funding appropriation cancels prior to the end of the 14-month period. In most cases, this would translate to be 18 months past the end date of the award period of performance. Downward adjustments, also known as returns or refunds, are available until the funding appropriation cancels. The eligibility check in ACMS will indicate whether the award is eligible on the adjustment form of the payment transaction. So we've talked a lot about money going out of NSF, but what about money coming back to NSF? If your organization needs to remit funds to NSF due to a positive cash on hand balance, the remittance can be completed in one of 3 ways: using ACMS, pay.gov, or by check. Within ACMS, as long as your overall payment request is a net positive, you can submit a credit against an award as an offset to the current payment request. We cannot accept a net negative request through NSF across one or more awards. Those will be rejected. If ACMS is no longer an option for a particular award, for instance, the grantee does not have another open award to offset the credit against, submitting remittances to NSF online through pay.gov is strongly preferred because it is another form of an electronic method. This allows remitters to make secure electronic payments and decreases the processing time associated with receiving and processing a paper check. Check is our least preferred method. We experienced significant delays in processing manual checks during the pandemic and still occasionally experience delays. Further, there is an NSF and government-wide shift to reduce paper checks as much as possible. We have received some feedback from some grantees on constraints that prevent their organization from using pay.gov. For example, if your organization is part of a state-managed treasury, it may not allow ACH debit into your central bank account. We have been collaborating with the U.S. Department of Treasury on this specific scenario and how we can accommodate this common requirement within our efforts to reduce check volume. There are some newer platforms that the Treasury have been successful in utilizing with some of their customers that have similar constraints, such as large financial services institutions. One of these platforms is called Credit Gateway. I'll discuss this option in a bit more in depth in just a moment. Before I get into Credit Gateway, I want to provide some additional clarity if you are using pay.gov for the first time. Before entering a remittance on pay.gov, you may need to first contact your financial institution to whitelist NSF's account to debit the remittance, which often needs special permissions depending on the configuration of your organization's bank account. The specific detail is on this slide and also can be found in our grant FAQ. So if you do need the ALC number, it is listed here, and sometimes banks will require a 10-digit version instead of the 8-digit version. So back to Credit Gateway. Our team has recently launched a small pilot to test the feasibility of Credit Gateway for our customers, and our team is currently working with a couple institutions who were frequent remitters by check and had indicated to us their inability to use pay.gov. The pilot allows us to better define our own business process and for us to better understand the experience of our grant recipients processing a Credit Gateway request with their bank. If you have an interest in participating in the pilot, we are still accepting a small number of organizations. But once we have completed the pilot, we are hopeful to be able to roll this option out to all those who are interested in using the new option. We anticipate making this option available to everyone during the latter half of fiscal year 2024. The goal is to reduce the administrative burden and processing time for both the institutions and NSF staff. As I mentioned before, NSF has been working with Treasury to utilize their Credit Gateway tool as an additional method to receive remittances. I would like to reiterate, though, pay.gov is still our preferred electronic method. But if your institution is currently unable to use pay.gov, it is likely because pay.gov uses an ACH debit, which is an automated clearinghouse debit transaction. Credit Gateway is different because it uses ACH credit, so it is initiated by the institution. It cannot be done through an online portal like pay.gov, but needs to be done directly with the institution's bank so that it is authorized and approved by the account owner. You may be asking yourself, what is the difference between ACH debit and ACH credit? An ACH debit transaction involves the receiver, in this case it would be NSF, pulling money from the sender's account. In these instances, the receiving organization initiates the transfer of funds when a sender has authorized the company to whom the sender owes money to settle the payment. An ACH credit transaction allows the sender to push money instead of it being pulled into different accounts, for example, to pay a bill or make a purchase. In these instances, the sender is authorizing the transaction directly with their own bank account. Moving on to monitoring and reporting updates. We often get a question about, what if we need more time? How can I request a no-cost extension? These discussions are best had with your grant official, but we will often get involved if awards have been fully expended. And so we like to just remind folks that awards that have zero funds available cannot be extended. Awards should not be extended just to use up remaining funds. And for grantee approved no-cost extensions, which is the first 12-month extension, can be submitted and should be submitted at least 10 days prior to the award end date. For NSF approved no-cost extensions, they should be submitted at least 45 days prior to the award end date. Late submissions can be submitted and considered, but you will need to explain why. And there are impacts when canceling appropriations are involved. And Tia will go into that a little bit more in her section. I want to talk a little bit about the program income reporting requirement. Because we no longer collect the SF 425, we require an annual submission of program income via a worksheet for any active awards within the prior federal fiscal year. The most recent submission, actually, now the most recent submission was just for FY23. We were just wrapping it up last month in November. If you have questions, we have a specific webinar that we produce each year for program income reporting, and the recording of our most recent webinar can be found on our website here via this link. But I want to give you a brief synopsis of what program income is. Program income is any gross income earned by the grant recipient organization that is directly generated by the activity that is supported by the NSF funding. This would include things such as fees for services performed, the use or rental of real property that was acquired under the grant, the sale of commodities or items fabricated under the grant, as well as licensing fees or registration fees for participants attending a workshop or conference that was supported by the NSF grant. Interest earned on advances of federal funds is not program income. Furthermore, program income does not include the revenue that you received as reimbursement for award expenses. So if it's an expense that you reported via ACMS and got reimbursement for it, it is not program income. So there are a couple types of treatment of program income. NSF's standard treatment of program income is additive, unless otherwise specified in the grant. Additive treatment means income earned is allowed to be retained by the grantee and added to the funds committed to the project by NSF, thus being used to further project objectives. Efforts should be made to avoid having excess program income at the end of the project. In general, program income should be expended prior to requesting reimbursement against the grant. We realize that it's not always feasible day to day, but we do expect you to true it up by the end of the award. In certain circumstances, special treatment of program income may be added to the notice of award. If the deductive method is selected, any program income earned must be remitted to NSF by crediting costs otherwise chargeable against the grant. A common example of this is when FL 26, the administration of NSF conference or group travel award grant condition, is added to the award. So be mindful that the notice of award may have this requirement, or it may be added by reference, as in the example of FL 26. Another activity that we do is the annual cash on hand validation. From November to January each year, NSF conducts a statistically valid random sample of selection of grantees that NSF believes may have had expenses incurred, but not reported to NSF based on an outstanding award amount. NSF is required by financial reporting standards to accurately reflect expenses at the end of our fiscal year. So this grant accrual estimate is necessary to properly report expenses on our report. The validation is an effort to validate how accurate that accrual was. Email surveys are sent to the ACMS certifier of the selected institution to provide the grantee's cash on hand balance as of September 30th of the given year. Utilizing the responses we receive, we can extrapolate the results across our population to determine if our grant accrual estimate was accurate. For last year, our validation yielded a negative 457 million cash on hand balance, which was within 1.1% of our accrual that we had calculated, which was a good result. We often, when this email survey is sent out, we often get questions about, what do you mean by cash on hand? A cash on hand calculation is basically a calculation of the organization cash position relative to all the funds they received from NSF through September 30th, minus any expenditures that they had incurred for the award through that same date of September 30th. When calculating the cash on hand, an awardee institution must include all expenses they had incurred, regardless of whether payments had been made for those expenses by that reporting date. If NSF was still collecting the quarterly FFR, this figure we are requesting would have been equal to line 10C on the SF 425 Federal Financial Report form. It is okay to have a positive cash on hand. That means you have been reimbursed for more, or you receive more funds than you have expenses incurred. It's also okay to have a negative cash on hand position. An organization where you have incurred award expenses through September 30th, but you have not yet received reimbursement for all of those expenses. Or you can have a zero cash on hand position, which means you've received reimbursement for all the expenses that you have incurred. And so the survey will be asking, what kind of cash position do you find yourself in, and what is the cash on hand amount? And again, just to reiterate, if we were still doing the SF 425, it would be equal to this calculation on line C. With that, I am going to turn it over to Tia for the next section.
Thank you, Justin. We're just going to do a quick discussion about the appropriations and why it matters to you. NSF appropriations must comply with federal appropriations law, requiring all federal agencies to close fixed-year appropriation accounts and cancel any remaining balances by September 30th of the 5th year after the period of availability. For most NSF research-related appropriations, the period of availability is a 2-year period, but not necessarily 24 months. For fiscal year 2024, this means that any unspent appropriations from fiscal year 2018, which covers October 1st, 2017 through September 30th of 2018, will be canceled by September 30th of 2024. Beginning in January of each year, we send an email notification to institutions that have awards with canceling funds. These emails continue monthly through September or until the award has been closed or fully liquidated. When reviewing your awards in ACMS, you can easily identify those awards because there will be a red flag next to the award number as shown here. Also, beginning in January, we send email notifications to institutions that have awards with canceling funds. These emails continue monthly through September or until the award has been closed or fully liquidated. The Award Cash Management Service, ACMS, will be temporarily unavailable around 4 to 5 business days prior to the end of the fiscal year. Awardee organizations will not have access to the ACMS payment process during this period. This will allow NSF to finalize payments and reconcile its general ledger accounts. Our goal is to have ACMS available beginning on October 1st. Now, NCEs, or no-cost extensions, past the canceling date will not be approved. If the award has multiple appropriations, the end date may be granted past the canceling date. However, only those funds not impacted by the canceling appropriations will remain available. Usually, an institution is allowed 120 days to complete final financial activity prior to the award financial closing. This means that an institution has up to 120 days to correct errors, post charges that were incurred before the end date, and address other closeout requirements such as final project reports. All payment activity must be completed by September 23rd of 2024 for awards whose appropriations are canceling. Any remaining funds for the award after that date belonging in the impacted funding appropriation will be deobligated and returned to the Department of Treasury. Other non-financial reporting deadlines are not impacted. In some instances, an award might receive a no-cost extension past the date of canceling funds. This can happen if the award has received funding from multiple funding years. The later funds are not yet canceling, which is why the end date could extend past September 30th. Let's take a look at the specifics in this scenario. University is managing award 1812334 with initial funding obligated in fiscal year 2018. Subsequent funding was received in fiscal year 2021. University receives a no-cost extension for the award that extends the period of performance of the award from May 31st, 2024 to May 31st of 2025. During the spring of 2024, the university receives a letter from the NSF Payments and Analytics Branch, Payments and Outreach section, notifying the university that the award has canceling funds, which will cancel on October 30th of 2024. The question is true or false. The university can ignore the canceling funds email. The Payments and Analytics Branch must have made a mistake in sending this notice. The answer is false. Our notification emails will identify the portion of the award's funding that is canceling and the portion which will remain available starting October 1st. Let's look further into this example for those that are a little more visual. Let's say your organization received $250,000 up front. The supplement that was received was a small amount of $25,000. The PI requested a no-cost extension because they had $100,000 remaining. The no-cost extension gets approved and the PI might assume I have until May 31st, 2024 to spend my remaining $100,000. In this scenario, they would only have until September 30th of 2023 to spend $75,000 of that remaining $100,000. After September 30th, the only portion that would remain available for the PI would be the supplement of $25,000. This is a very common example that we experience every year and know this can be quite surprising to the PI when they learn about this. This is why it's important to communicate this information in numerous notifications to your organization. It is important not to ignore these notifications that are sent to the ACMS point of contact and for them to be a liaison and communicate frequently with your PI. If you have questions, please ask your payment specialist and we're happy to explain. Let's look at the appropriation lifecycle using the same award example that was funded by two appropriation sources. The initial fiscal year 18 funds were open and available for 2 years, from 2018 to 2019. Then there are 5 years to liquidate through 2024. The supplement had an open availability from 2021 to 2022, then 5 years to liquidate those funds through 2027. The no-cost extension that was granted does not extend the appropriations availability for the initial funding. One more scenario regarding canceling funds and advanced payments. University was granted a no-cost extension to May 31st of 2025 for an award involving canceling funds. There is $100,000 available on the award, with $50,000 canceling September 30th of 2024. The university estimates $30,000 of the canceling funds will be spent by the end of September 2024 and would like to request advanced payment of the canceling funds prior to the ACMS shutdown period. How much should their advance payment be for? A, nothing, B, $30,000, or C, $50,000. Organizations are cautioned against advancing remaining funds simply to expand remaining balances. In some circumstances, it would be appropriate to request an advance payment if there are known expenditures that have been incurred prior to the cancellation date. However, these invoices will be paid by your organization after the cancellation date. However, if it is inappropriate to request advance payments of canceling funds simply to allow further expenditures to be incurred after September 30th cancellation date, even if the project has been extended to permit further use of non-canceling funds. The use of canceling funds for expenditures incurred after the cancellation date is not allowed. In general, advanced payments to grantees must be limited to the minimum amount needed. The timing of advance payments must be in accordance with the actual immediate cash requirements of the grantee in carrying out the purpose of the approved program or project. The timing and amount of advance payments must be as close as is administratively practicable to the actual disbursements by the grantee for direct program or project cost and the appropriate share of the allowable indirect cost. It is important to remember that the process for determining advance timing, the period the advance covers, and amount requested should be based on justifiable estimation basis, so it can be supported in the event of an audit. And we're going to go into the awards monitoring. And I want to start by discussing our final unliquidated balances of concern notification, or FUBs for short. An award qualifies for this notification when 75% or more of your award budget remains unspent and there is only 3 months or less left for this period of performance. The purpose of the notification is to bring these awards to your attention because your PI may be at risk of losing the remaining funds. We send these notifications out monthly to the ACMS points of contact at the organization and ask that they be the liaison for communicating with the PI and other organizational stakeholders. These large unliquidated balances could indicate there may be a problem completing the project or that there could be unexpected delays. It is important to identify whether a no-cost extension may be required or if other discussion need to be had between the PI and the program official. Our newest post-award monitoring notifications involve awards which have not had payment activity for more than 12 months. We are referring to this notification as GNAP, or grants with no ACMS payments. When we launched this notification earlier this year, there were over 1,000 awards that fell into this category, with 475 of them not having any ACMS payment activity since the award's inception. If you receive this notification, please review the award and notify the appropriate PI, project director, or other project staff. If there are program performance issues, the PI should contact their NSF program officer or grants and agreements official as soon as possible. If the delay in activity is due to access issues with ACMS or financial issues such as a payment or expenditure problem, please contact your grant accountant. In the spring, the institution's ACMS point of contact received an email indicating that there is an award ending on June 30th with a large unliquidated balance. To further complicate the scenario, the award also has a red flag next to it in ACMS. The PI was notified, but has been a bit behind in processing expenses against their project, but manages to do so in September, just in time for the next drawdown in October. In October, which of the following will be true? A, the award is not set to financially close until 120 days after the award end date, which will be the end of October, and all remaining funds will be available for drawdown. Or B, NSF knows this PI and is notorious for late expense reporting and sets funds aside as a precaution. C, the remaining funds are no longer available since they canceled at the end of September. The answer is C. Many awards identified on our FUBS notification won't also be impacted by canceling funds. However, it is very important to pay attention to the red flag next to the award in ACMS. In some instances, there may be a scenario where the award is both identified as a FUB and has canceling funds. So that is the end of this section and of our presentation. Please be aware that we are accepting questions. And if you have any questions that are direct to your university, please feel free to reach out to your grant accountant, and we are available all the time.
Okay, thank you both for that presentation. And we do have some time for questions. Thank you, Justin, for answering those in the Q&A as we've been going. So if you did ask a question, make sure you check for the answer, and others can see the answers as well to questions that were posed. So I'm just going to go through the list here until we run out of time. And the first question is, during a government shutdown, how should institutions, or will institutions, be able to draw down funds during a government shutdown?
So the agency updates their plan for operations during a lapse in appropriations each year. That means it can change, but the current plan is posted. If you search on our NSF website for plan for operations during a lapse in appropriations, or some combination of those words, you'll be able to find it. And in that guidance, it does indicate that we will be operating ACMS for the recipients to draw down funds on existing awards on a limited basis. So in the event of a lapse in government operations, payments will be processed. It will just be on an intermittent schedule until normal operations resume.
Great, thank you. And there is a lot of information there for all aspects of NSF's guidance when there is a threat of a lapse in appropriations, from submitting proposals to drawing down funds and so forth, submitting no-cost extensions. So do look for that if we do get into that situation again. Next question is, if there is no program income, do we still need to submit a report to show $0?
And the answer is yes. We do require a response from every institution that is identified to have had an active award during the reporting period for program income. We do simplify the process, so you can either submit a $0 program income report with the appropriate certification statement selected, or we do accept an email in response to the email request that you received for the program income report, with the appropriate certification statement in the body of the email, and that would be sufficient to be recorded as a response.
Okay, sticking with program income, the next question is asking whether you can confirm whether or not program income earned on an NSF award must follow the same spending rules as the award funds received from NSF.
Yeah, that's a common question that we receive, so I thought we could answer that one live. We do address this in our FAQ document that you were provided a link for, but I'll give the gist of it here. So program income must be spent in accordance with the terms and conditions of the award that it is tied to. Expenses charged to program income must be allowable, allocable, and reasonable in relation to the activity that's being supported by the NSF award. So if the expenses are unallowable on the project award, then it would also then be unallowable on the program income funds.
Okay. And okay, next question is, how detailed should justifications for manual adjustments be?
So we don't expect the justifications to be super detailed, because we do require, if you're requesting an adjustment on multiple awards, you just have one box to be providing the justification. But we do expect that you're providing a justification for each award that's being requested. We often see, unfortunately, a lot of canned responses from organizations in that justification field, where when we do some analysis and look back at past adjustments, we can see the same 10-word response on all of the adjustments that have been submitted by the organization over the past 5 years. And so we would encourage you to be providing an appropriate justification for the scenario of that particular award, rather than just providing no justification or a canned justification response. We are looking at ramping up an outreach effort to improve that in the near future. So I wanted to take the opportunity to kind of tease that here with this audience now.
Great. Next question is, when they see a red flag in ACMS, how much time remains to be able to draw down funds?
Tia, would you like to take that?
After the award is closed, you'll have 14 months until you can no longer draw down funds. When it is financially closed, you will have to make adjustments to the award instead of payments. So when you actually go in, if you are trying to pull additional funds, you will use the adjustments tab to pull down any payments that you are trying to do.
And if the red flag exists, meaning there's canceling appropriations, does that 14 months get truncated?
Yes, actually, if your funds are canceling on that appropriation, you will only have up until the end of that fiscal year in order to request those funds either by payment and or adjustment.
Okay. Next question, or it's not so much a question as it is a comment, is it would be helpful to see a sample email notification of canceling funds where the award has multiple funding distributions across a number of fiscal years.
Yeah, so instead of trying to type a response to this, I thought we could just try to describe it. And if my description is insufficient, you're welcome to reach out to us and ask for an example. But we will identify the award that is impacted by the canceling appropriation. And on that line in the email, we will give you some basic information about when the award end date is, who the PI is, and any funds that are canceling will be grouped together in the same column, and any funds that are not canceling will be under a column labeled non-canceling funds. So we separate and we identify of all of the remaining funds available. So say you had $200,000 remaining available, and 100,000 of that is canceling. 100,000 would show up in the canceling column, and 100,000 would show up in the non-canceling column. We make that pretty explicit in the email.
Okay. Next question is, who receives the emails for canceling funds?
Yeah, so we typically send all of our monitoring courtesy notifications, including the canceling funds notification, to the organization's ACMS points of contact. Those are the individuals at your organization that have been authorized to report on financial related matters to NSF. And so since our notifications involve financial related matters, we want to send these notifications to them and ask that they be the liaison with other stakeholders at your organization, such as the PI, departmental support staff, and that way they can help translate the information that is being sent in the notification. And because some organizations have several ACMS points of contact established, to prevent spamming the organization, we will run a report to see who was the latest active preparer and certifier in ACMS for your organization, and we will limit the notification to be sent to just the latest active preparer and certifier. So that means not all ACMS points of contact will be receiving it, because if your organization has 20 people listed, we don't want to be spamming all 20 people with the same notification.
Okay, the next is, I guess this person is looking for a little bit more information on the advance payment of canceling funds. You could talk a little bit more about that to clear up any confusion that folks may have.
Tia, it looked like you wanted to take that one, or would you like me to?
Well, I'm just going to ask you to do it because I'm not sure exactly what they're asking.
Sure. So, according to uniform guidance and NSF's implementation of uniform guidance, advance payments are permitted when there is a need. In the event of canceling funds, we do allow advance payments for known expenditures that you can appropriately document and justify that are on the horizon that you're expecting, that have been incurred, you just haven't paid them. And the reason why advance payments is appropriate in this situation is at the end of the year, we actually shut down access to ACMS for the final business week to allow for our own year-end closeout activities that we need to do as a federal agency. That causes some friction with the fact that if you don't request those funds prior to the shutdown of ACMS, access to those funds ends on September 30th. And when the system comes back up October 1st or October 2nd, it will already be too late to request that final payment. So we encourage you to work through the analysis of what are the expected expenses on a particular award that are expected to be incurred through September 30th for the canceling funds, and make sure you request the reimbursement in advance before we shut down ACMS. So hopefully that clears it up. If you do still have questions, I would recommend that you reach out to your grant accountant or financial management specialist, and we would be happy to try to further explain the scenario specific to your organization.
Okay, next question I wanted to pose here is really a question of access, and that is, do PIs have the ability to see payment information in ACMS?
Do PIs?
Yes.
Hi, PIs do not automatically have direct access to ACMS. They would need to be granted the appropriate permissions. In ACMS, we do have a view-only version for ACMS access that would be appropriate to give other stakeholders if they wish to navigate in the system themselves. It would be the ACMS financial representative permission is a view-only version that would not allow the PI to necessarily transact or submit requests specifically, but recognize that ACMS provides a portfolio view of all the awards your organization has. So not only would that PI, if they're given view access to the system, have access to their own awards, they would have access to all of the awards the organization has. And so it would be up to your organization to determine whether it's appropriate to have PIs directly in there.
Okay, going back to program income, question is about if NSF has funded a conference grant, do all the registration fees collected for that become program income? And then following on to that, if multiple agencies funded the same program, does that get reported to both agencies, or multiple agencies, I should say?
So program income often involves some kind of gray areas where the answer is not always straightforward. And so for these kinds of questions, I would actually encourage that we take that question offline and you reach out to us directly so we can have a more detailed conversation about the details. That's a tough one to answer in generality.
Great. Is your involved in reviewing and approving any cost sharing requirements and awards to which cost share is mandatory or required?
Yeah, cost share reports is an interesting one. So that is technically considered a post-award financial reporting mechanism, but our office is not involved in it. Cost share reporting is handled as a notification in the research.gov notifications and requests module. And those cost share reports get sent directly to the program office for review. Did you have anything to add to that, Jeremy?
No, I would say reaching out to the program office, well, I guess I should say yes. Reaching out to the program office is good, but also communicating with your grants officer that's identified in your award notice is also a good step to take with that. We are just about out of time. And I do want to thank my colleagues today for participating and presenting and answering all of these questions. Again, thank you for attending, and have a great rest of your day.